We're going to take a look at the research behind nitric oxide supplementation and the potential effects on performance metrics with resistance and endurance training. So nitric oxide, it's a molecule involved in numerous physiologic functions throughout the body, and it can be produced endogenously, or various NO precursors can be administered exogenously to facilitate or enhance the NO response. Two pathways where NO is endogenously produced include the NO synthase dependent as well as the independent pathways. In the NO synthase dependent pathway, this is typically activated in the presence of vascular shear force with increased blood flow, typically with acute exercise. L-arginine is oxidized to L-citrulline and nitric oxide by NADPH in the presence of oxygen. And then NO is going to diffuse into vascular smooth muscle of the tunica media and bind to guanylate cyclate. This results in increased cyclic guanosine monophosphate, or CGMP, activity and reduced intracellular calcium concentration. Subsequent signal transduction cascade results in vascular smooth muscle relaxation and vasodilation. Things to consider: so there's a high concentration of arginase in the liver. This may negatively affect the bioavailability when supplementing with L-arginine. L-citrulline, however, bypasses splanchnic extraction and otherwise pre-systemic elimination via hepatic metabolism. About 80% of L-citrulline is catabolized in the proximal tubules of the kidneys. So based on these mechanisms, it's proposed that L-citrulline may be more effective than L-arginine as far as a bioavailability perspective goes. While oxygen is required for the dependent pathway, the independent pathway is actually activated in the presence of reduced oxygen. So to our understanding, salivary glands extract circulating nitrate, and then anaerobic oral bacteria reduce nitrate to nitrite. This nitrite is then either metabolized to nitric oxide by gastric acid, or it's absorbed into circulation as nitrite. Things we need to consider: so NO, nitric oxide, has a half-life of 3 to 4 seconds, whereas nitrate has a half-life of 5 hours. If we're looking to take measures of the NO response, it's going to be better to measure the plasma biomarkers such as nitrate, nitrite, because of this increased half-life. Many of the commercially available NO supplements have several ingredients beyond just the NO precursors discussed here, so those would have to be reviewed more so on an individual product basis and the research behind them, preferably unbiased. We also need to consider the precursors in isolation prior to looking at some of these other supplements, because we need to first see if these basic precursors actually do have an effect and do what they're intended to do. With the NO synthase dependent pathway, we're going to be considering L-arginine and L-citrulline supplements, whereas with the independent pathway, we'll be considering nitrate supplements. So with L-arginine, there appears to be a dose-dependent effect where we need more than 3, mostly around 6 grams for vasodilation to increase muscle blood volume. Even though muscle blood volume increases with 6 grams of L-arginine, this doesn't appear to be due to an increase in NO response because there was no change in the plasma nitrate or nitrite levels in this particular study. No significant improvements in strength occur with L-arginine when supplementing 6 grams prior to exercise or after consuming 2 grams a day for 2 weeks. There is evidence that consumption for an extended duration with a lower dose of 2 grams may increase VO2 max in the male athletic population. Only one study has actually revealed an enhanced NO response with taking L-arginine, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. So L-arginine in combination with other supplements. So L-arginine, when it's combined with other vitamins and amino acids, there's significant improvements in fatigue, oxygen consumption, and rating of perceived exertion during cycling and swimming tasks. However, none of these studies measured the plasma biomarkers, so we cannot necessarily attribute these improvements to an increased or an enhanced NO response. Strength is measured by 1 rep max bench press, improved when supplementing L-arginine alpha-ketoglutarate, or AAKG, for 8 weeks, but not when taken acutely just prior to exercise. So again, use for an extended duration rather than just an acute effect was observed in that particular study. When 6 grams of L-arginine is used in glycine-arginine alpha-ketoisocaproic acid, or GACIC, greater power and retention of power are present in cycling sprints as long as the individual is untrained, so no real effect on cycling sprints if it's a trained cyclist. In resistance trained males, GACIC has been demonstrated to improvements in lower body torque, sustained work, and strength. Again, none of these studies actually measured the NO plasma biomarkers, so we can't necessarily attribute these results to an enhanced NO response. Even though there were improvements in these measures, which may justify taking the supplement, we cannot necessarily attribute it to that NO response if those markers weren't measured. L-citrulline at 3 grams per day for 7 days, reduced rating of perceived exertion, improved pedaling speed, and mean power output. Similarly, 2.4 grams per day, improved cycling time after 7 days of supplementation. And then 6 grams per day, both L-arginine and L-citrulline resulted in increased plasma biomarkers. However, L-citrulline was superior in improving VO2 response time relative to L-arginine and placebo. L-citrulline combined. So although the effect size is small in this systematic review and meta-analysis, average dose of 7.8 grams of citrulline malate yielded improvements in strength and endurance measures for resistance and endurance trained individuals. While this systematic review and meta-analysis didn't include these particular NO plasma biomarkers, a dose of 6 grams, which is actually less than the average dose for that systematic review and meta-analysis, did demonstrate an increase in plasma biomarkers with citrulline malate. Nitrate. So nitrate can be obtained through dietary measures, consuming foods such as lettuce, spinach, or beetroot juice. Based on 2 systematic reviews and meta-analyses, nitrate supplementation resulted in improved time to exhaustion in well-trained and recreationally active subjects, but no effects on actual time trials or measures during the graded exercise test. Authors report considerably variable range with nitrate dosing, so no real standardization here, ranging from 4.1 to 19.5 millimoles per day. Certainly more research needs to be done to really determine what the optimal dose is. Nitrate doesn't appear to have an effect on acute strength, but it does have an effect on peak power during the Wingate test. In summary, there's no evidence that L-arginine alone improves strength. There's some evidence that L-arginine used for a lower dose for an extended time period may improve endurance measures. Similar to L-arginine, not a whole lot of research for L-citrulline alone as far as its effects on strength improvements. Most of the evidence on L-citrulline supplementation favors endurance and power measures, typically in cycling. And with citrulline malate supplementation, a dosage of 6 grams not only yields increased plasma biomarkers for nitric oxide, but it also improves strength and endurance measures. So overall greatest improvements there, where we know there's an NO response with citrulline malate. L-citrulline appears to be the best option if the goal is to improve acute power and endurance. If the goal is to improve strength and endurance, citrulline malate is more appropriate. Nitrate supplementation has demonstrated positive effects on time to exhaustion and power, but not necessarily strength measures. There's also, again, like we mentioned, poor dose standardization with nitrate supplementation. So the vast majority of research on NO supplementation studied the effects on moderately trained and recreationally active subjects. In elite athletes, there's not a whole lot of evidence that supports the use of NO supplements, and just the training itself may be of greater benefit rather than using NO supplements in this particular population. And that's just due to pre-established dietary and training conditions that are at a pretty elite level already. NO supplements likely not going to have a huge, or at least from what we've seen thus far based on the research, not a huge impact on performance in that group. For the untrained individual, little evidence as far as NO supplementation, mostly due to the lack of study in this population. So not necessarily that there isn't an effect, there just haven't been a whole lot of studies on untrained individuals. There's been a few, but just not many relative to the moderately trained athletic population. So although there's evidence supporting improved performance metrics in certain populations, like we discussed, there's only been a few studies that actually measure the concentration of plasma biomarkers for NO production. If the goal is to improve performance measures by enhancing the NO response, measuring these plasma biomarkers should occur in the particular study if we're going to attribute the results to the NO response. Thank you, and if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email.